We have with us today Rebecca Better and Steve Lowe from Jewish Care to help us understand a little bit more about what's actually happening with the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And apparently people, just like with the NBN, are getting letters about your area is about to come on, people are getting letters from the NDIS. Well, similar things happening. What's going on?
Absolutely. So there are some people actually who live in the inner east and outer east of Melbourne, so in the councils of Monash and Boroondara, who are actually getting calls and having their plans done. They're in an active rollout area at the moment.
Right.
And for those living in what we call the Bayside Peninsula, which covers Glenara Council, Stonington, Port Phillip, people who have been on a current Victorian state-funded system are starting to get their letters talking about access to the
national scheme.
Absolutely. The NDIA, so the agency running the national scheme, are starting to send those letters out now. So,
and is it clear as mud?
Absolutely, it's clear as mud. We've already had some people call saying, do we have to prove disability again? Do we call them? Do they call us? So it can be quite confusing. So
we've got a monolithic government agency again trying to roll something out, and it creates a problem because A, they don't roll it out very well. So presumably Jewish Care is here to help us understand.
Absolutely,
a little bit better. My
role at Jewish Care is to assist the community to transition into the NDIS, into the national scheme. Mm-hmm. My services are open to anyone of the community, whether they're a Jewish Care client or not. So I'm here to help, and a large part of my role is sitting down with families and pre-planning what they need to do and to get into the scheme, and also plan what they want under the scheme. And my services also include, if they want, going to the meetings with the NDIA with them. So,
right. So do you know, I'm assuming you know every Jewish household in Melbourne that's involved, or in Victoria, that's involved in the current state scheme?
We only know people who are engaged in our services.
Right.
So, and we certainly know them, and we have very close contact with them, and we've got a number of people also contacting us. As they get the letters in and we come closer to this scheme, some of the big questions people have are the obvious ones. How do I do this?
Yeah.
Will I be better off or worse off? How do I get... If everything is hinging for the first year on this meeting with the NDIS where they do a plan with me, how do I best organise that plan? How am I prepared for that plan to maximise my chance of a successful entry? So because it is, as with all rollouts and with all grand schemes, it is quite a complicated thing. It's quite a complex beast.
Yep.
And that's why Rebecca is offering, we're offering Rebecca's services to say, well, really, Rebecca is a navigator. So because of this big complex rollout, because people are now starting to get letters, what Jewish Care is doing is offering a navigator to say, well, okay, we've had a look at the map, we've actually been down the road a few times now with a few families, and we're here for you.
Okay. You're listening to Talking to the Max, and I'm joined by Rebecca Better and Steve Lowe this morning from Jewish Care, and they're helping to steer people through the quagmire that is the introduction of the new NDIS, the National Disability Insurance Scheme. What are new participant pathways? That's something that you've highlighted. So what does that mean?
So the NDIA has acknowledged...
Which is the National Disability
Insurance Agency. Sorry, so right. That's the agency running the scheme.
Yep.
They've recognised that the systems they had in place were not user-friendly.
Right.
And that they caused a lot of angst, fear, and frustration for families or people with disability. So they're looking at introducing some new methods and what they call a pathway. The NDIA loves a road.
Okay.
So they're calling it a new pathway to help people access the scheme and to go through the process. So the provider pathway, the new one for providers, has been completed and rolled out. The new one for the participants is still in testing phase. So we're not 100% sure how that's going to look. But the main thing that they're changing is that these planning meetings, a lot of them in the past have been done over the phone to help with the rollout time schedule, and there's a renewed commitment to doing face-to-face meetings, which we think is very, very important. It's very important to actually sit down in a room with the planner, with the person with a disability to do the plans to ensure that it covers their full life experience.
So this is the pre-planning process that you've been talking about.
So that's the planning process.
Yep.
Pre-planning is something that I do before we go into that meeting with the NDIA. We're finding that it's very important to have knowledge about the scheme and how the funding is done, and that it's very important to walk in with that knowledge to those planning meetings to get the best outcome.
So you're helping people who are going to these meetings understand what they're asking, what they should be asking for, etc., what they're going to confront.
Exactly.
And how to ask.
Right.
Because I think how to ask and how to answer a question, whenever you've gone and whether it's a doctor's appointment or a Centrelink appointment, when you're asked a particular question, the words you use in your answer can dictate the result you get, whether it's a diagnosis or a tick on a form from Centrelink or whatever it is. And I think that's really important with the NDIS in relation to the National Disability Insurance Scheme funds things related to your needs because of your disability.
Yes.
Not anything else.
Right.
Not health, not justice, not education. So how you ask something and how you answer something is actually quite important.
Can you give us a concrete example?
Yes. So when, as you may tell from the accent, I'm from South Australia, and
We'll forgive you.
thank you.
You've made a good choice anyway.
I have much better rain here and milder summers. I quite like it. When the NDIS rolled out as a trial site in South Australia in 2014, and I was working in country South Australia, a family of a young child said, well, as part of our package, we would like some after-school care. So because my child has a disability, I've got a part-time job, so can we have some after-school care? And the NDIS said no, because that's a need relating to you being a working parent. Every working parent has that need.
Right.
That's not a need because of your child's disability.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense. But I guess what I want to understand is how is something like that likely to change? So how are claims or what can be paid likely to change because of the conversion to the National Disability Scheme, the national scheme, as opposed to the state-based schemes?
So in answer to the example Steve just gave, if you've got a 15-year-old child, though, most 15-year-olds would come home from school and they can let themselves in and they can sit around the house until the working parent comes home.
Yep.
More often than not, a child with disability of the age of 15, you couldn't do that. So that's where you have to specify the needs around the child's disability rather than around the parent's needs.
Sounds like a legal argument.
It is. It's terminology,
Yeah.
and it's asking the question in the right way or asking for the supports. Another classic example is respite.
Yep.
So in the past, respite has been seen as something for the carer rather than the person with disability. It's now been retermed as the NDIS has its own language, and they now call it short-term accommodation with an overnight stay out of home. So, it's a way of phrasing that the person with disability, where they gain advantage in being out of home, learning their own skills, being autonomous and independent from their parents, that's how you get what used to be called respite for the carers.
So we're changing the terminology probably with a view to changing eligibility for receiving funding as well, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit suspicious of government all the time.
Yeah, I think we're all suspicious of government all the time. I think what we need to remember is the NDIS is concentrating on the person with disability, not on... They don't often look at the family as a whole.
Okay.
Correct.
So in the end, NDIS model is as opposed to state-based models that it's replacing, is that situation improving or not? Or is it getting worse? Because I know one of the big problems with NDIS, and we're going to hear it more and more in the coming year, is funding it. Because we're just talking about more tax cuts now because we've got an election coming up. So,
yes, they're certainly talking about more tax cuts. I was quite pleased to hear that on the news as well. But we also heard a couple of months ago of a Medicare levy increase next year.
Yes.
And that Medicare levy is to help fund the NDIS.
NDIS, correct.
What we know is that Australia wants to include people with disabilities in its social and economic life. We know that the NDIS is now in its fifth government, I think, because Gillard brought it in, and then there was Rudd, and then there was Abbott, the fourth or fifth government. So 4 or 5 governments. I mean, we're all losing count of how many.
And tomorrow it could be somebody else, that's right.
Well, it could. So I think that the funding to me seems relatively sure, because we know we want to hit the $22 billion a year mark end of mid-2020, and we know that to help that there's going to be a Medicare levy increase next year.
Yeah.
We know that Australians have overwhelmingly supported proper inclusion of people with disabilities in our
and both sides of politics.
Yeah. So I think that given that we want to be that inclusive and that it's survived so many governments already, I'm not as concerned about whether we'll hit that $22 billion mark. I am concerned about the unmet need that might come out through a federal scheme and whether that will be enough.
Yes. So let's get back to the specifics of how Jewish Care can actually help people. So these letters and these approaches to people, when are they about to hit the bagel belt?
So it's already hitting the bagel belt.
Right.
We've already got some clients in that area receiving their letters. So there'll be a lot of people receiving those letters.
And being confused.
Right. So give us a call. Give me a call at Jewish Care and we can...
okay, let's just remind people of how to contact you.
8532 9802 is my number.
Okay.
So give me a call, or it's RBETTER, RBETTER at jewishcare.org.au, and people can contact me directly and we can start helping them out.
So are you running any specific types of forums for people to attend as well?
We have been running information sessions. So we have obviously Jewish Care clients, but we have a wider range of people that we've been emailing those out to, and we've been having a lot of people coming to those. I will be running some more next year, some basic information sessions, but also some more detailed workshops for people to get their head around the new system and how to do it best for their family members or for themselves. So we're certainly always putting out information sessions for people.
And how long is this process going to take?
So rollout for Bayside Peninsula starts 1 April, and the phasing schedule will be for at least a year.
Right.
Probably a little bit. I think it will go longer than a year.
It's a monstrous system, isn't it?
And that year will primarily be people who already receive funding from the Victorian State Government Disability Services.
Yes, or else how would the NDIA, I'm getting the jargon right, I think, know about them?
Exactly, but there'll be a lot of people in our community who may not be getting services who will be eligible for the NDIA, and they'll be applying as well. So I think that So
are you actively trying to reach out to people like that?
Yes.
In that situation?
Absolutely. It's part of the reason we're here.
Yep. Good. So I hope people are listening.
But and I think, so it will take a year. People will want to be a bit patient on it. I think it's really difficult to be patient. We've seen other parts of the country come in, well, as I said, in South Australia, we were doing it a few years ago.
Yeah.
And given that there's usually, more funding and it's more personalised and the person controls their funding and where it goes, which is a fantastic initiative, we in the Bayside Peninsula have had to wait a fair time for our turn.
Right.
There's only 2 or 3 regions in Victoria rolling in after us. So the fact that it will still take a year once we're in 1st of April, I can understand people's patience running thin.
Okay. Now, you have a few initiatives you wanted to talk about as well, I think.
Well, there's some of the planning sessions. A couple of quick things I wanted to plug from the service point of view. So we've also worked very closely with the NDIS with some of our colleagues across Jewish Care. We're just finalising the NDIS approval of our employment and education team to assist people with employment and education through in the NDIS, as well as our allied health colleagues with occupational therapy and other allied health. So we're expanding the Jewish care response for NDIS participants and for the community to ensure that Jewish response. The other thing, couple of things I'd like to give a quick plug to. Firstly, Sunday, December the 3rd is International Day for People Living with a Disability.
December the 3rd, so not far away.
No, not far away, and we're holding an event in partnership with Maccabi All Abilities, Access Inc., Flying Fox and the Australasian Union of Jewish Students at Caulfield Pavilion, called You Can Ask Me Anything, where people can, for $100 a table or $15 a seat, come and share a breakfast at 9:30 in the morning with people living with disabilities and ask them anything. And also see the launch of our new video. If you are interested in that, you can either contact Rebecca or I will certainly put a link up, or contact Jewish Care's Disability Services. Right,
so that's on your website or your Facebook page?
Yeah, it's certainly been on the Facebook page, yes.
Right, okay, so I urge any families out there who have members with a disability who may be eligible, and even the broader community, just to check out this event on the 3rd of December. It sounds like a great opportunity for people to get together in a communal sense. So, kol hakavod for that. That's good. Excellent. Any final points you need to add? Or have we covered the scariest part of facing the NDIS?
I suppose I would like to leave it on a positive note, as much as there is fear and concern, that for most people, once they get their plan, they are getting funding that covers a lot more areas of their life, and they are finding that they're able to do a lot more in their community and be included in their communities. So there is a positive and there is a light at the end of the tunnel for most participants of the scheme.
Thank Hashem for that. That's really good to hear. Okay, well, thank you for being with us again. It's really good. You've been listening to Talking to the Max on 87.8 FM, your Jewish community radio station, J-Air, and we've been talking about Jewish Care's assistance to people in the community with disabilities on how to struggle your way through, how to navigate your way through the introduction of the NDIS in Victoria. And by the way, roughly how many people are we talking about covering?
As in Jewish?
As in under your purview.
It's a bit of a hard number to ascertain, because there's people that we just don't know about in the community that will fit under the NDIS.
Okay, so if you do know anybody who's not receiving any assistance, make sure that, and you think they might be eligible, make sure that you do. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.